Yo, yo, here we go. This over there from Ohio is Jack Rizzo. From the bunker of North Carolina, I am RJ Dufresne. And this is Red Pill History, a Your History Teacher Sucks episode.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, sir.
How are you doing up there in the above the Arctic Circle?
Well, we had snow this past weekend, and then it was 65 degrees today. And so we're confused.
Yeah.
we're,
Well, that's typical for your area, right?
but but well,
Confusion.
but we're not all under house arrest, at least, unlike you guys.
Well, we're kind of lightening up a little bit. Our governor kind of flip flops every day, but I think North Carolina, we weren't terribly entrenched in the first place.
Right.
So we're kind of the same as we were. Nothing's changed since March, basically. So
Well, you
yeah,
guys have been under the Cooper regime for a while, so you're used to being having a tyrannical overlord.
right. But you can't find that anywhere in the press. So
No, well, we can't say that. I mean, why would we want to disrupt what's good going on?
yeah, right.
Uh,
So we are gonna do probably one of the I don't know if I could say our favorite president, but
uh,
probably our one of the favorite ones to talk about,
yes, yes.
and that is none other than Thomas Woodrow Wilson. And his first name is Thomas Wilson, and I find it very cool that Thomas Wilson is the actor who plays Biff Tannen in Back to the Future. So I spent like 2 hours studying Biff Tannen, and then I had to throw it all away.
Well, you know what?
Mad Dog Tannen was a big deal.
I would have preferred Mad Dog Town.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Yeah.
I just plug him right in there. So, oh man, yeah, this was a painful week research wise. I already knew a lot about uh the person I consider maybe the worst, definitely in the top three worst people to ever sit in the Oval Office. I knew quite a bit about him, and I thought, well, maybe, I mean, obviously there's going to be stuff that I don't know. Let's learn some more. And every time I learned more, I'm just like this seething rage and hatred. And I've been kind of kicked off for the last couple of days anyway. I've been in an ornery mood, so this is a good time for me to do Wilson.
Oh yeah. Well, that's good. We can feed off each other's frustration. But even the guy that did his biography in this awesome, wonderful,
Yeah.
completely biased book that did Wilson. In his first paragraph says Wilson is a racist under any circumstances whatsoever. The
Good.
dude's a racist, and
Good.
this is the guy that sort of admired him, and he said, "I'm not gonna, I'm not trying to say that's good or bad. I'm just trying to explain him."
Oh man.
Well, which is, I mean, we can go. He grew up in a right during the Civil War. Wilson says his first memory is his dad telling him that Lincoln got elected and that there's going to be a great war.
Wow.
He says this is his first memory. So
Mhm.
Wilson was born 1856, so he's about 4 years old
Yeah, I can see that.
at
That
the
sounds about
time.
right.
Yeah. And so the boring stuff, we'll go to the boring stuff.
Yeah, get the boring
Thomas
stuff out of
Wilson,
the way.
Thomas Woodrow Wilson, born in 1856, which is again 4 years before the Civil War. Died in 1924, which is 3 years after, 3 years after his he left office. He was the 13th president of Princeton University. He was the 34th governor of New Jersey, and he was, of course, the 28th president of the United States of America, going from 1913 to 1921. Now, I found it interesting when I researched. I don't know if you did Wilson's father, Joseph.
No, I didn't
Uh,
know that, but yeah.
yeah, so he was um, Joseph Wilson, his father, actually published a abolitionist paper
Really?
in the 40s, 1840s, went to 1840s,
Mm-hmm.
and so he was like against slavery.
Right.
He ended up moving to Virginia to find a job, and also he ended up moving further down south to Georgia. And the further he moved down south, he became more pro-slavery to the
Uh-huh.
point where he was a preacher in the Presbyterian Church.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, supposedly the Presbyterian Church split over slavery, like most of the country did. And Woodrow Wilson's father was a very staunch pro-slavery Southerner.
Wow.
Which is, so you're talking about, this guy trying to explain Wilson. This is how he grew up. He grew up with the Civil War, with his father being a Southerner or a Confederate sympathizer.
Mm-hmm.
We don't get the Civil War. There's so many aspects of the Civil War, but the fact of the matter is pro-slavery.
Right. Right.
And this is how Wilson basically grew up.
Right. So that was what formed the core of his what's the word, of his value system.
Right.
Was slavery good, which equates to anybody who's not white. And because back then, it wasn't just blacks who were enslaved, it was Asians were enslaved, Middle Easterners were enslaved, the Irish, who a lot of people considered non-white, were enslaved. Basically, if you were not white European, you were property. You were less than human.
Property is the right word.
Yeah.
Property is definitely the right word, because you were a human being, but you weren't looked at as the same class as someone that owned land or owned property, or was a higher up. There was definitely a class system.
Well, not only that, but they looked at it as a minority person was not a fully formed human being. They weren't capable of taking care of themselves. And Wilson I'm sure, I know I'm going to get into that a little bit later on, but they looked at them as almost like children, almost like toddlers. We have to take care of them because they can't take care of themselves. Even outside of slavery, the ones that were free.
Right. And I believe, though, even the ones who were free were still considered two-thirds census. Am I right about that? Or was that slavery?
That was only owned slaves.
Okay.
I know. They might have. I haven't gotten into the minutia of that ever, but my understanding has always been it was only as they were property.
Right. All right. So Wilson grew up, through the Civil War and doing all this other stuff, and ended up really having a hard time figuring out what he wanted to do. He became a lawyer. He went to 4 different universities.
Yeah.
He wanted to be a lawyer, but he got bored with that. He was down in Atlanta, and he ended up in Johns Hopkins, and doing other stuff. But he eventually, going a little forward, he ended up being a professor back in his alma mater, which is Princeton, which he probably spent the next 20 years of his life. He was in academia. That's all he was. He really never had a job other than being in academia, which basically isn't. You're not really producing anything. You're sitting in the room with the other professors, and you're you're just talking about theory and going back and forth on stuff, and your mind can get really warped if you have the real world. That's not real world at all.
No.
Being stuck in an environment like that with other professors.
Right. And that's the whole thing is it would be different if you are somebody who likes to have those kind of conversations, but you're having them with people who are out in the real world making things happen. But These are all theoreticians talking amongst themselves. And in that time period, the great progressive movement, the eugenics movement, was just starting up. And that fed right into Wilson's mindset that he grew up with of the hierarchy of human beings. these people are not quite human, or these people aren't worth the time of day because of the color of their skin or because of where they were born. Um, so if you're stuck in a bubble talking about eugenics and talking about this new thing called Marxism that was just coming around, and you're talking about all these ideals where you're creating a utopia, it's really easy to lose yourself in it and think that your ideas sound great because nobody's gonna really argue with you. They're
Right.
all going to echo back to you how great whatever it is you're saying sounds.
Right. Right. Yeah. Which is, like I said, he had no real world experience. He's just stuck in his echo chamber,
Hmm.
talking amongst themselves, going around and around, just bouncing theories off each other.
Yep.
And so eventually, at some point, he became the president of Princeton,
Hmm.
which in the early 1900s, I believe, and he uh, really was not well liked by the board of directors of Princeton. Wilson rubbed people the wrong way,
Yeah.
but he understood the power of the press early on,
Yes.
and always sided with them,
Hmm.
to the point where he got a lot of his stuff in Princeton. He accomplished. He fired a lot of professors. He hired new ones. Something to do with school lunch or something. It was really a really messed up time, and they tried to get rid of him. Actually, Grover Cleveland from Princeton recommended Wilson to be president, and then like within a month he regretted it. He's like, "That's the worst decision I ever
Yeah.
made is to recommend this guy." And Grover Cleveland through his life and Wilson never really liked each other, which to me, who is a fan of Grover Cleveland, really says a lot about Woodrow Wilson.
Right.
Um, but when the higher ups in the New Jersey government was looking for a new governor, they recommended Wilson.
Yeah.
And Wilson obviously took the thing. And since when Princeton found out he was applying for another job, they legally fired Wilson, and now he was out of Princeton, which is what they wanted him to be anyways. So
It's the best thing that ever happened to Princeton.
yeah, right. And I found it weird because we think of Princeton now as like Princeton, but it was very a fledgling college
Yeah.
back in the day, and it wasn't what we think of it now. But so you think of, and we're going to get into the 1912 election, which I think is one of the most interesting elections ever.
Hmm.
But we have this guy who was a nobody, basically, not nobody, but not anybody outside of Princeton knew who this guy was.
Right. Right.
In 1910 to 1912, being elected the president of the United States,
Exactly.
just like that. And he didn't really do much in New Jersey. He was a governor for less than 2 years,
Hmm.
and then the skyrocket shot to the top that Wilson took was pretty astounding.
Yep.
In political terms, he went from nothing to the president,
Yeah.
just like that.
Well, I mean, we've had a recent example of somebody who did exactly that, who got into a political machine, was nobody, and then all of a sudden, within a couple of years of
No
being
experience.
of no experience, was put into the Oval Office with, in my opinion, fairly similar results to what we got with Wilson. So
Right, and when you look at 1912, I'll dive into it real quick. It reminds me a lot of '92, and we were both alive during '92. It's to me when I hear about it, it's very similar. Here we are in 1912 with a Republican incumbent by the name of William Howard Taft,
who
who
was
was actually
not
quite popular with the
right.
people. He was not a bad president. He stayed out of the way for the most part. But Teddy Roosevelt, as hard-headed and selfish as he is, he didn't like what Taft was doing.
Right.
Because Taft was more of a conservative type Republican, and of course Teddy was more of a progressive.
Yeah.
So the Republican Party wanted Teddy to run again.
Hmm.
And Teddy said, "Okay, let's go." So during the convention of Republican convention, Chicago of all places, because when you have a convention in Chicago, it's always bad. It's
It's
always
never, ever good.
never good. And they ended up, even though Teddy Roosevelt had enough delegates, they ended up somehow, I didn't get into the minutia of it, but Taft ended up winning the nomination, which of course pissed off somebody of the ilk of Teddy Roosevelt, which will
Right.
cause him to run third party
Yes, exactly.
and create the Progressive Party, otherwise known as the Bull Moose Party.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we have a Republican split. Now, if you remember 1992, we have a Republican of the George H.W. Bush incumbent coming in. Popular, I don't know, probably not.
He wasn't great, but he was popular because he had been Reagan's vice president and he had a lot of that pull. But he had kind of mismanaged his presidency. But he was still going into the election season of '92. He was projected to be an instant winner because his numbers were so good.
Right. It was pretty much over. I mean, everybody knew he was going to get a second term.
Right.
And then, of course, this guy, this little squeaky guy, Texan named H. Ross Perot, decides to run against and takes votes away from the incumbent Republican. So, which is what Teddy Roosevelt did to Taft.
Yep.
Now, basically, any Democrat, and we got to think of the times here. There was no Democrat president from Franklin Delano Roosevelt in 1932 to basically James Buchanan, the president before Lincoln.
Yes.
There was only two Democrats.
Yep.
Grover Cleveland,
Yep.
which is about as Republican as you can get, as conservative as you can get. Let's put it that way.
Right.
And Woodrow Wilson.
Yep.
The fact they could have ran anybody. They could have ran anybody as a Democrat.
Yep.
And they were going to win in 1912 because of the split. And it's almost like 1992 where this nobody, listen, we all know the Clintons now. We all know the whole regime. In 1991, you did not know outside of Arkansas who Bill Clinton was.
No.
You just didn't. And he went from nobody to all of a sudden president of the United States. And it was all because of the Republican split.
Yep. Exactly.
So here we are with all of a sudden now we got this president named Woodrow Wilson that just happened to be president. Here we are.
Yeah, wasn't he? Didn't they tell him he had been elected, and he himself was surprised?
Well, he wasn't the front runner. The front runner was Champ Clark, who was the Speaker of the House at the time.
Right.
Champ Clark was pretty much the shoe-in to be the nominee, but as the backdoor politics always go, there's nothing illegal or whatever about it. But he went to which I don't understand. I'd like to know more of this, but research William Jennings Bryan. At this time, he's probably one of the most popular politicians of the time. He ran for president 3 times or something like that. And all of a sudden, it's 1912. Anybody can win, and this for some reason William Jennings Bryan does not run, but he still has pull.
Yeah.
Wilson went to Bryan and said, "Hey, you support me, I'll make you Secretary of State." Secretary of State.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was Secretary of State or Chief of Staff. I think it was Secretary.
Or maybe it was one of those two. I can't remember. But he gave him a position in the cabinet.
Right.
Okay. And of course Bryant, with the pull that he has, and he did have pull back then. He got all the western states, being from out there, and so on the 46th ballot, Wilson became the Democratic nominee.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah, it was one of the most hotly contested nomination processes ever. I mean, just that whole convention was just, and it wasn't nasty like when Lincoln was nominated. That was a nasty convention. It wasn't nasty like that, but there was a lot of confusion as to who is going to be the leader of this party.
Right. And who was basically going to be automatically elected. I mean, he had over electoral votes.
Mm-hmm.
Wilson did in the election. I mean, if you look at the map, like it's the only time where an incumbent, it was the worst defeat by an incumbent ever.
Yeah.
Taft won two states, Utah and Vermont of all places.
Right.
But
Which,
both Taft and Roosevelt are from New York. They didn't. Neither one of them won it.
right.
Wilson won it.
Right.
Um, and it was all because of the split. Now, Taft lost his vice president a month before the election, and
Mm-hmm.
he was the last. He was the last vice president to die in office, which
Right.
which I thought was cool. And he was also the first incumbent vice president to be nominated for a second term since John Calhoun, your boy,
Really?
in 1830s.
I
Yes,
did not realize that.
yes. So Taft had a lot of weird stuff going for him, and of course Teddy probably had no business running. Like, why did you? He could have ran a third term if he wanted to.
Yeah.
He wanted to go travel the world and do whatever. So why come back? And actually, they wanted Teddy Roosevelt to run in 1916 as well, and he
Mm-hmm.
refused. He refused.
Yeah.
So, but here we are. The election's over. He only won 41% of the vote.
Yeah.
He still had
Yeah.
400 electoral votes. It's real. I wouldn't say it was a nasty campaign or a nasty election. It was just weird. And it
Yes.
was all because of the split to the Republican Party
Yep.
that we have a President Wilson. So here we are, a President Wilson.
Our favorite. Oh, by the way, what I was going to suggest before we got started was to do a drinking game where every time we mention some violation of the Constitution,
Oh,
that Wilson, we'd both be dead of alcohol poisoning about halfway through the show. So I've got sweet tea. You got something there. I don't know if it's an adult.
I got Diet Coke and a little Jim Beam, but it's not. It drowns each other out. It's about as much alcohol as cough syrup. So.
But I have a little flask that's got the Soviet Union emblem on it. I was gonna be like, oh, this is perfect for Wilson.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
The hammer and sickle.
I have to reload this thing like 4 times before the end of the episode, and by the time we get to that point, I'm not gonna be able to see straight, so I'm gonna just make a mess. So I abandoned that pretty quickly.
That was probably a good call. Maybe we should do that for another president with less abuse of power.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's talk about Wilson as a president. What interesting things did you find out? Let's hear what you said.
Well, here's the thing. The most interesting thing that I found out about Wilson, because I knew he was a creature of his times. I knew that he was at the leading edge, at being the president of Princeton. I knew he was at the leading edge of the intellectual movement, which meant the eugenics and progressive and things like that. What I didn't realize was how, because his presidency is almost a study in how are we going to destroy the Constitution piece by piece. But I thought that was something that was very recent with him. Come to find out, when he ran for governor of New Jersey, he actually campaigned promising he was going to be an unconstitutional governor. So now, of course, then he's talking about the Constitution of the state of New Jersey, but it's the same exact mindset. I don't consider any value to this written document that is the foundation of the office that I'm going to be taking. My whole job is to go in and wipe this out and start over again. And again, I didn't realize that philosophy went back as far as it did. That's why I said the more I researched into him, the more pissed off.
How did you get?
She's like, because I don't. My mindset is, if Roosevelt wanted to run for another term, he could have easily switched parties and run as a Democrat.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And probably would have won.
Probably would have won. Right.
But instead, he split the ticket, allowing this just horrible, by any measure, horrible person to go to occupy the White House and to influence the next 100 years, literally.
Right. I mean, he even said in one of his quotes that the Constitution. I'm paraphrasing. It was more of a suggestion
Right.
than anything. There was just some, suggestions in there on. He really despised the fact that the president wasn't more of a authoritarian type
Yes.
man. I mean, he even valued the British Parliament.
Yes.
He looked at it. The presidency should be a prime minister more than a president.
Right. Well, his mindset was in him being in love with the British style of government was the thing he liked most about the British government was there's no written constitution. There's no thing that no piece of paper that we can go back to. The closest thing they have is the Magna Carta.
Yeah, in
There's no,
1215.
right. There's no piece of paper that we can go back to and we can say no, 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 no. We can't do this because this paper says we can't do this. He preferred to have unwritten and just change things as you change the rules of the game as you go along, essentially, and which is it's just I don't know if you've ever if you've ever played basketball against like your little cousins and they want to change the rules as you go along, but it makes it very tough to win,
Right.
and it makes it very tough to enjoy the game. You can't have a country operate, and I'm not dissing the thing is if you actually get into British politics, they do have rules. They don't have it written down, but they have such a tradition of manners and mannerisms that they don't have to have it written. They know what they can and can't do. Uh, but Wilson literally thought the best way to govern is to not have any kind of documentation whatsoever and just fly by the seat of your pants the whole time. And
Right.
whatever the president or whatever the Congress says is that's going to be the rule of the day. And it might change 2-3 years from now, but right now that's going to be the rules.
Right. So let me ask you this: why is it that so many historians or so many presidential, enthusiasts, they always have Wilson at least in the top 10,
right,
if not better. I mean, this book right here, when the rankings first came out, I think they had Wilson. I mean, right now they have Wilson as
what did you say, 11 or something like that?
yeah, as 11 in 2017, but in 2000 when they first came out with this, he was number 6.
Right, which is ridiculous.
Now he's losing points in my mind because they're finding out, well, he was a racist,
Right.
and there's a lot of things that were shady about him. But why do you think he's such in high regard as a president?
Well, first off, the people who write those books, they are Wilson.
They are Wilson. You're right.
They are academics. They are intellectuals, and I consider myself an intellectual, but they're intellectuals as in highbrow. We're better than everybody else. And they are, Wilson is to this day I believe he's the only president to ever be a political science major.
Right. He went into political. Right.
So, I think that a lot of their ranking comes from camaraderie. If you're a farmer and you see a farmer as president, that guy's gonna be a half a step up no matter what he does because you're gonna be able to relate to him. And so I think Wilson is always going to be highly regarded by those folks because of who he was, not because of what he did in office, but because of his background. And then the other thing is, he was a progressive. He was actually the whole reason that people don't call themselves liberals now. First off, because they're not really liberals aren't liberal. The liberal is freedom. And so now they're progressive. He's the guy who switched that around. So the people who write those books are progressives, and they see Wilson almost as the original progressive. Even though there were progressives before him, he was the guy that put progressivism on the map.
Right.
And he was the guy that got progressive things done. So I think that's the big reason. I don't think that he goes much further beyond that because if you look at his accomplishments, his accomplishments, no, they're no good.
Well, if you look at some of the country, I think it was Australia or maybe Brazil or something. They call the Liberal Party is the Conservative Party.
Yeah, yeah.
It's you know it's opposite of what it is here, which I find. So let me ask you about a couple of these things here that Wilson was championed about. Maybe you can throw some light on it. Um, what do you know about the Federal Trade Commission?
The Federal Trade Commission, one of my favorite. I love all these ABC
Yeah,
programs.
yeah. It's just the beginning of the ABC stuff.
Yeah,
Roosevelt or FDR really got into the
yeah.
ABCs.
But the mindset of the FTC, I think, has almost has a place because the job of the federal government is to help regulate interstate commerce. And if you had the Federal Trade Commission regulating interstate commerce, I could see that. But what they went 5 steps beyond what their mandate was. Originally, they were basically there just to bust up these what we would call monopolies. Now they were trusts, and
Trust.
trusts were set in place to where if me and you owned all the cattle farms in a region, we could set it up so that we're going to price our stuff so we're making money, but nobody else, no mom and pop can come in and make money. We're going to work together for that, and we're going to set up shops so that you know these shops will only deal with mining your cattle. They won't deal with anybody else's. These butcher shops and things like that. So originally the FTC was set up so that they would go in and they would bust up these trusts so that you could get more competition in an area so that capitalism works like it's supposed to.
Right.
But instead, the FTC basically went in and started picking winners and losers, and has kind of turned its own foundation on its head.
Right.
But again, the FTC, I would almost be in favor with it, except that it is in direct violation of the Constitution.
Constitution. Right.
Drink, drink. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 5, I believe, basically says that none of these, that you can't set up a government entity for the sole reason of disrupting private business.
Right. Exactly.
So Wilson's like, oh, screw that. Now, and here's
well, that all started. Teddy Roosevelt started that too.
Right, right.
And the trust bust.
A lot of what Wilson did, what he signed into action, was started before Wilson took office. We put all this on Wilson because he's the guy who signed it, or it came up during his presidency, and he deserves most of the blame or the credit, however you want to look at it, for that, because if he didn't sign it, it didn't go into law. But this is stuff that was already in the works before he came around. Right. He just embraced all of it. And he famously would literally start something like the FTC, and before it was even finalized, before he even had the bill on his desk to sign, he'd be starting on his next okay, where are we going to dismantle the Constitution at this point? So he literally would just kept rolling and rolling and rolling around it.
Right, and I found a lot of this being in his first term, to be honest with you.
Yes.
First term.
Yeah. Well, his second term was mostly engulfed by the war.
So. Yeah. We'll get into second term. Yeah, World War II or World War One. I mean, and then his health issues. I mean, he had, from all accounts, they say he had at least 13 strokes during his whole life. Yeah. He was very plagued by health issues. Well, what would you say? What do you think of when I tell you A Birth of a Nation?
Birth of a Nation is it's essentially the rewriting of American history by the KKK. That is essentially white man comes in and white man saves the world by creating America from all these subhumans that were already here. And it was I mean, it was the first movie that had a private screening in the White House. Now, again, revisionist history. Some people say, "Oh, Wilson didn't really like that movie. He watched it and then derided it." No, he didn't.
No.
You don't have a private screening of a movie by a
He
group.
gave it legitimacy,
Yeah,
and which caused the second rise of the KKK. The KKK was kind of dying at the time,
it was
and
almost
it
dead.
blew up in the 20s and
Yeah,
30s. It blew up.
yeah, exactly. And if you look at Wilson's actions in office during that time period and immediately following, they're right in line with the mindset of that movie. So how can you say that he derided it, or that he watched it and was disgusted by it, which is what I actually read at one point. He was disgusted by it. No, he wasn't. He embraced every inch of that.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It's one of the most famous side notes. What movie was first played in the White House? It
yeah,
was a movie about the KKK.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And how the KKK are the saviors of America. They're the past, the present, and the future of this country. It's like
Right.
no, no.
Right. So, like I said, in 1912, he was kind of like, he walked through a big wide door of the presidency because
Mhm.
anybody could have won it. And it was kind of proven in 16 when he had to run for re-election again.
Yes.
So he ran against a guy named Hughes, who
Mhm.
is basically, so I like to compare people from the end of the day. It was basically John McCain.
Yes.
He was right in the middle. Like he agreed with a lot of some of the stuff Wilson did, not a lot, but some of the stuff Wilson believed in. But he wasn't too far conservative. He wasn't too far liberal. He was kind of like they were trying to get someone in there that everybody liked.
Yeah.
Like
Oh yeah.
John McCain. But of course, let me ask you this: when you put in a middle of the road moderate as a Republican, what usually happens?
He gets his ass kicked every time.
Obliterated.
Single
You
time.
got the Doles, you got the McCains and the Romneys, and I mean, shoot.
With
I
with
mean,
one
even the, the,
exception.
the Gerald Fords. Gerald
Yeah.
Ford was never elected. He got killed.
No. George Bush was the only what I would consider true moderate to ever win election as Republican, and he did it 100% on Reagan's coattails. If
Yes,
if
because he
he
was
run,
because Bush, Reagan, Bush. He was kind of synonymous
yep,
of the name. Bush was Reagan, Reagan was Bush, which wasn't
exactly,
really true. But that's a different
yeah,
that's a different subject. But that's who I like to think of Charles Evans Hughes as kind of the middle of the road guy. So in actuality, he was kind of a squeaker. It was very very close. I think. Um, uh, Wilson got like 279 or something like that electoral votes. Um, he won New Hampshire, I think I read by like 35 votes
it
or
was something
something
like
like
that.
that.
I know it was less than 100.
Yeah.
I
And
know.
it was very small. So he could have easily lost that election, which kind of shows you that, in my opinion, he wasn't really to go from 400 and something. Oh, that seems like a landslide. No, not really. He kind of was a gift to
Yeah,
1916 where he kind of squeaked by.
yes,
So I don't know if that was really people were people liked Wilson at the time.
yeah. Well, the thing with Wilson, uh, we always try to find something positive to say about every president. And I tried, man. I really did. The
I got
only
two of them. I got two of them.
the only thing I could find that I thought was a positive was he was very anti-tariff. He saw tariffs, and a lot of people in America saw tariffs as a tax on the consumer, and it kind of is. Uh, but you have to understand that at the time, the only revenue that the federal government had was tariffs. So the tariffs when Wilson took office were 40% on items, which is huge.
Jesus.
And I always knew that he got rid of some of the tariffs, but I thought he cut them back pretty severely. Because why would you need the income tax unless you're going to cut the tariff severely? He cut them to a whopping 26%.
Right.
So he basically didn't cut them at all. So that's why I was like going in thinking that's going to be my positive. He cut back the tariffs And they're like, what the hell? 26% not cutting crap back. So,
Well, then get you into the subject that really makes you angry, which is the income tax.
oh God. So, so here's the thing. So here's the thing. Income tax is completely unconstitutional,
Unconstitutional.
except for the fact that they passed an amendment to the Constitution allowing it, but it was never properly ratified. And that's where you hear a lot of people today will say, well, it's not legal for you to pay income tax and you can beat it if you take it to court. Good luck with that.
Yeah.
I mean, trust me, I'm on your side with this, but
Right.
good luck with that. You know, unfortunately, we live by the law of precedent now, and enough precedent's been set to where you're not going to get out of paying income tax by
About
sight.
100 years.
Right. So, but so they had been talking about income tax for a little while
Yeah.
before Wilson took office, but it was always shot down because it's a tax against prosperity. The more you earn, the more tax you pay. And we're not even talking about a progressive income tax. We're talking about a straight, flat income tax. It's still the more you make, the more you have to pay. And that's decidedly un American and unconstitutional. Uh, so they passed it by saying, okay, we're going to cut these tariffs. We need to figure out a way to have revenue for the federal government. Why don't we institute an income tax only on the people making over X amount of money? And I think it was, what was it, $200,000 or something like that
Yeah.
back. But it was a huge amount now. And of course, the majority of people, just like they would today, like, well, that's not ever going to affect me. Sure, let's go for it. Which
Right.
which made him a little bit popular then. What they didn't see was a couple years down the road, the income tax, which started out at 7%, which I'd be ecstatic if we had 7% income tax today. I'd love it.
That's right.
Within just a few years was 77%.
Yes.
And I don't care who you are, 77% going to the government that doesn't produce anything, they're just taking that's absolute theft. And
Yes.
that's part of, you know, what's been going on this week with me with some of these idiots out there.
Oh, it's worse. It gets worse and worse every day. It gets
that
worse and worse every
that
day.
the people that literally don't see taxation as being theft burn me up. Now, I pay my taxes. I believe that if we're going to have an operating government, we have to fund it somehow. But I also don't believe that your taxes should go to the 85% of government programs that don't do anything but create a welfare state.
Right.
Um,
Or give it to an entity that that can't even control its own budget. That is trillions of dollars in debt. I mean,
right,
what does that mean?
right.
Oh yeah, here's
Hey,
my $5,000. Have fun.
right. Whether it's a state or whether it's another country, we're giving millions of dollars to, and we're getting off subject, but whatever.
Right.
We're giving millions and billions of dollars to countries that literally hate us. And there's no reciprocation. There's no, well, what do we get for it? You know, at least a couple of the countries out there, countries like Israel, you can say, well, that's our foothold in the Middle East. That's our one true ally in the Middle East. We can support them however we can. And I don't have really that much of a problem with it because we do get a lot back from them. We get a foothold in the Middle East. Israel helps us out with technology and things like that. But us giving money to people who chant death to America does not ever make any sense. And that's why I get so up in arms about income tax, because it all started with this little peon who thought it was a good idea that just because the Constitution says we can't tax income, well, let's go ahead and tax income anyway.
Yes. Yes.
Nobody will ever notice.
Yes. Do you think ever one time Wilson said, "Well, let me look at the Constitution to see if we can do this"?
I think if Wilson had done that, his head would have exploded, which would have been a good thing.
Yes.
I think that Wilson, if you suggested to him that he look at the Constitution for something, he would have kicked your ass out of the White House at that very moment, because that would have been the biggest insult to him. To think that some document that some guys 100 years prior to him wrote, or 150 years prior to him wrote, that he had to be bound by that was a tremendous insult to him. And he tried at every turn to eradicate that very document.
Right. Oh yeah.
I mean,
It meant nothing to him. It was just a suggestion.
right, exactly, and that's how he looked at it. He looked at it as a suggestion. This is a guideline. This isn't actually a law. He looked at the Declaration of Independence. His mindset with the Declaration of Independence, the mindset of everybody before him, including Lincoln most famously, was the most important part of the Declaration of Independence was the preamble, was the part that talks about we have certain unalienable rights, that we have, that among those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that government is established not for men, but to protect those rights that are God given to us. Right. He said, screw that crap. If you want to read the Declaration of Independence, Declaration of Independence properly, skip the preamble. He literally said, skip the preamble and go straight to the grievances. He thought the grievances were the most important part of, because understand, like you said, he was a lawyer by education. He was an intellectual, and to him, the law points of the grievances were, because they justified the American Revolution. That was the important part of the document, not the stuff talking. Who cares about the freedom stuff? Why are we pissed off at these guys? That's the important part. No. I mean, that mindset, if we had that mindset in the first 150 years of this country, if we'd embraced that, we would have collapsed in on ourselves a long time ago, because that's almost a mantra of hate.
Right.
The whole reason that we have Britain as a great ally now is because we said, yeah, we know we said that in the Declaration of Independence, but look at this preamble. The preamble is the important part.
Yes.
Forget the grievances. And then within 25 years of us being established, we're buddy with Britain again.
Yeah, and we always have been since 1812 or 1814, I guess, since it ended. Yeah. We always were allies. And it's just like, hey, let's just, yeah, you're right. It's the preamble that is the most. So, no, I know. You get.
I get a little fired up about that.
Let me change the subject real quick, and then we'll get into. Okay, I'll tell you the one thing. There's two things. I'll tell you the one thing that I found about Wilson.
Yeah.
And he kind of ran. Both of these people ran in 1916, and Wilson's mantra or slogan or whatever you put it is he kept us out of war.
Yes.
Okay. Wilson knew the United States was going to war. He knew that. He said that it's inevitable. He knew that, but that was his slogan. His backup plan, and this is what I think was good. Now, I haven't been able to back it up with many sources, but from what I understand, Wilson said if he lost in 1916, he would resign as president along with the vice president. But before that, he would make Charles Evan Hughes Secretary of State, which means he was third in succession.
Right.
They would both resign and make him president to prepare for the upcoming war. It's because they got the lame duck session coming up for the next 3 or 4 months. So he wanted him to be in there immediately to prepare for what was coming.
Right.
I heard that and I was like, well, that's pretty selfless.
I mean, that would be incredibly selfless, but I can't see Wilson because he ran for a third term.
Well, his wife ran for a third term. Well, we can get into that in a minute, but
the body of Woodrow Wilson ran for a third term.
Which is, again, so, yes, and you look at that, whether Wilson was incapacitated or what, his wife wanted him to run again.
But
he was brain dead. But we're jumping ahead a little bit, but I wanted to jump into World War I with that. Because that was coming. So
the other thing that makes me think that would not have happened was he would have to have the cooperation of his vice president. And I don't know that his vice president would have gone along with that. So Wilson was not exactly known for keeping his promises.
No.
And the people around him weren't known for keeping their promises. So
yeah, it was called the Wilson Backup Plan, and I tried to research it more. I found it in just one spot. So whether it happened or not, I don't know. But the world was going to war.
Yes. Which he was very much against in the beginning.
Yes.
He was an isolationist. He did not believe that we needed to be, and for right or wrong, part of me says he was right with that. We didn't need to. This was not our war. This wasn't like the Nazis where you had a power that said, okay, we're going to have abject hatred of these people and we're going to eradicate them from the face of the earth, and we wanted to go stop that. This was literally just a war in Europe between the European nations. So other than the fact that we have allies there, what business was it of ours to be in the war?
Right.
I can kind of see that.
Yeah, but Wilson always had an intervention, or he wanted to intervene in other countries to insert, our Western democracy everywhere around the world, and that that was one of his. That's not constitutional either to go in and say, okay, you're going to do this now. You're going to do this now. That was his whole dream, and the part of him getting into World War I was to create was to kind of get other countries like ours, and it's where the League of Nations came in eventually as well.
Yep, exactly. And I think we'll get into the League of Nations last because I got some real problems with that.
Right.
You want to jump right into World War One?
No, we have League of Nations after World War One. But what are your thoughts on World War One and how Wilson handled it?
Well, here's the thing: was again Wilson, like most progressives, said one thing and did another. He's a flip flopper. I would have much more respect for him if he would have either stuck to his guns or been all for getting involved from the beginning. I'm not a fan of people who are easily swayed on their values, for right or wrong. If his values are wrong, I want him to stick to those values because that's what he actually believes. Right. But the thing with World War One, and this has nothing to do with Wilson, that was where the U.S. we came into our own. Wilson did have a hand in bulking up the Navy. He did increase the size of the Army. They had the
because of what?
I can't remember the name of it.
Well, it's because that was the first. He introduced the draft.
The civil service.
Yeah, the civil service, the draft. So I think he asked for volunteers, and the Secretary of War says, "I need 3.5 million."
Right.
And he and only 500,000, wanted to fight, volunteered. Right. So they came up with the draft, which is
it's unconstitutional.
Unconstitutional.
Drink, brother.
Oh, sorry.
But in fairness to Wilson, he wasn't the first president to institute a draft. Lincoln also did a draft during the Civil War. Well,
in a way, Washington kind of did too.
Yeah, exactly.
It wasn't. It didn't become like law.
No.
Yes.
With Wilson, because he put in the Civil Service Act, it became law.
Still today.
Right. We could have a draft tomorrow and nobody could say anything about it.
Yeah.
But he did do a lot towards modernizing the size and the scope of the Navy, mainly in response to German U-boats, because that was the whole reason that we got into World War II, was that the German submarines were attacking our freighters, and we tried to make an agreement with Germany that, hey, you guys aren't going to attack our stuff, and we're just going to stay out of this. But Germany wouldn't keep to their word, or so the story goes. There's documentation that says that's not accurate, that Germany was staying away from it, and we sabotaged our own ships in order to get into World War One. But that's all conspiracy theory stuff. That as much as I love it, I don't know that it necessarily belongs here.
No.
The fact of the matter is, we did get into World War One, and that created the United States as a superpower. It put us not only on par with the countries in Europe, but a step above them, because we came in essentially as the saviors to the big boys in Europe, to Britain most notably, and I think that helped to establish us as, I don't want to say as the policeman for the world. Wilson would say the policeman of the world, but
Which is what he wanted, yeah.
which is what he wanted, and that's why I kind of buy into the conspiracy theories that no, Germany wasn't attacking us; we were setting ourselves up, because Wilson, at the end of it all, got what he wanted from it, which was the United States being seen as the one, essentially the one big player in the world that could moderate the rest of the players. So,
Right. Well, he also at the time, instituted for I think the second time, John Adams did it, another Sedition Act,
yes.
which made it illegal. There's a lot of, I think over 1,000 people were jailed in America because of talking bad about the army, talking bad about the government, talking bad about the flag, which is, whether it's here or there, whether you agree with them or not, is unconstitutional. It's like freedom of speech, number one.
Number one. It's number one reason.
And like Lincoln and I don't know if Adams ever jailed anybody. I know Lincoln did, but that's the root of propaganda right there. There's no dissent. You have to say it this way, or else you go to jail.
Yeah, and you talk about propaganda. He actually created a department of propaganda. I cannot remember the name of it. I've got it in my notes somewhere, but I couldn't find it. He created a department that literally their entire reason for being was propaganda,
which is basically the media today.
Yeah, exactly. And in fairness, you look at the media today, and media has always been like that. They've always had people that they supported and people that they didn't. There's never been a truly neutral media. No. But the problem is back when, in Ben Franklin's day, the media, you knew who that paper supported, and they were very open with it. Now they try to say, "Oh, we're neutral," and there's no way that they're neutral.
Right.
One way or the other. They're just not. And anybody who says they are literally needs a head examination.
Doesn't pay attention.
No, isn't paying attention even a little bit. So Wilson actually created. Not only did he try to obliterate the First Amendment with the Sedition Act and with the Espionage Act,
that's the other one. Yeah.
Which nobody wants. Nobody wants to make a hero out of espionage in the country or sedition in the country. But the fact of the matter is, we were established as the country because of sedition. We were seditious people against the British government.
Yes, the British at the beginning. Yes, right.
And the whole reason that the First Amendment is in place is because we rebelled against the tyrannical British government, and our founders knew if it happened once, it'll happen again. So we need to leave in place these same mechanisms that we used to successfully rebel.
Right.
So if you create a Sedition Act, well, that would shut the American Revolution down in a heartbeat. And the British did try to do that.
Right, which made it amazing how Adams went along with that. But that's a different president. But Wilson same way, Lincoln same way. Jailed journalists.
Yeah.
Jailed, trying to do something, having a different opinion about the war. That's insane. I mean, that is tyranny.
Yeah. Now, in fairness to Lincoln, he was desperate because so many states were joining the Confederacy, and he's like, I've got to keep some core of this together somehow.
Yeah.
And that was the only way he saw it, but it didn't make it right by any stretch. So Wilson not only tried to obliterate the First Amendment, but then he tried to replace it with propaganda. So not only can you not speak out against the government, but we're going to create a department within the government whose entire job is to put out misinformation.
And they do it under the guise of, well, we're trying to protect you, which is always what they try to do.
Always.
No matter what they try to take away, it's always because of we're trying to protect you.
Yes.
And we're trying to, during the war we'll get rid of this, but once the war is going, we got to do this for the betterment of everybody, and that's still wrong.
Also, remember Wilson, he had that mindset that we talked about earlier, where there are people, and by the time he became president, it wasn't just people of different races. There was a thread going through the progressive movement that said the whole reason that we want to do this movement is because there's a handful of people who should be in charge of telling everybody else what to do, because we know better. Common people cannot take care of themselves. Common people can't,
because we're elitist.
Right. So if you have that mindset, of course you don't want to have the First Amendment out there, because what do these idiots know? We just need to control them. And it is, if you take that mindset, we're trying to help you. We're trying to take care of you because you obviously can't take care of yourself.
Right. It's security over freedom.
Right. And the fact of the matter is, first off, then why do they have us vote? If we aren't intelligent enough to take care of ourselves, why are we intelligent enough to vote for the people?
Don't sell yourself short. It could happen eventually. Don't worry about it. It's down the line, and you know it is.
Yes, I know it is. And that's going to be the mindset of, is going to be, well, we have these groups out there that are trying to sway elections, and obviously you guys can't be trusted enough to choose fake news from real news.
Hey, look at it now. Look at the 2020 Democratic primary. Did the voters choose it?
No. So, and
regardless of what happened.
Right. I mean, if they want to nominate Bernie Sanders as their nominee, even though he's not a Democrat, more power to them. That's their choice. But no, we can't have that. You guys, and that's where you see this progressive thread does not change. In the last 100 plus years, it has not ever changed. It's still the same mindset. You still have eugenics in the form of abortion. You still have the we need to take care of our toddler children that are either lesser beings because of a different race, or because they're not one of the elites that are in control. We need to take care of them. We need to take care of the minorities because they don't have enough brain power to take care of themselves, or they don't have the work ethic to take care of themselves. Never mind that some of the greatest people in history are part of those groups.
It's victim. They promote victimhood mentality.
Yeah,
they do it to women too. They do it to the female gender. Yeah. About we need to do these special laws so you can do this, or we need to take away that so you can. I can go on and on about that, but it's victim mentality,
Yeah.
You can't do it on your own, so let us take care of it for you.
Right. And Wilson was the progenitor of all that. He was the first guy in office, and you could feasibly say Roosevelt was the first person for that, because he was a progressive. Wilson was the first person to go in there and say, no, we're going to make wholesale changes to the foundations of this country in order to facilitate us taking care of you. Right. You can't be trusted to have, your own money either on a gold standard or regulated by local banks and things like that. We're going to set up a Federal Reserve. We're going to set up a central bank.
The Third Bank of America, otherwise known as the Fed.
Yeah, which is unconstitutional.
It's very unconstitutional.
I don't care that Thomas Jefferson wanted it. It's unconstitutional.
As much as you hate Andrew Jackson, he was against the banks.
I would have been side by side with him on.
He's against the banks.
The thing is that so what you're saying is, because the Constitution does not allow the government to establish a private entity. So we're going to take a private entity. We're going to take this conglomeration of 12 banks, and we're going to put them in charge of the money for the entire country. Where is that in the Constitution? Where
It's
is
nowhere.
that allowed?
It's nowhere.
Right.
It's
So,
nowhere. And if I could anything that I know Wilson did a lot of crappy stuff that's unconstitutional. And nobody really talks about the Fed, the third bank of the United States, basically being it. But I think that's one of the top ones as far as being unconstitutional.
yeah, it's definitely
You know,
it's
the
in
income
my,
tax and
top
what
three.
stuff.
It's in my
Right.
top three. So it's just it's been nothing but trouble. And the thing is, it's like everything else that progressives do. They had to do this in the middle of the night, away from the eyes of the American people.
Right. And they sneak it into another bill that was important.
Right. So
it's the thing about it, progressives, liberalism. They never wake up one day and say, "Oh, okay, that's enough."
yeah,
There's always something. It never, ever, ever, ever ends. There's always more to take. There's always more. Well, but let's real quick. The League of Nations.
Oh God.
What was Wilson's? This is probably Wilson's pet dream.
It was.
The League of Nations. He thought about this for many years, probably before he was president. But
he was.
But World War I was what helped us out. So go ahead. Yeah.
He was talking about this when he was at Princeton. I do know that. He set up what he envisioned as a group of nations. He had his 14 points that he wanted to hit for this. And if you want to really get bogged down in some minutia, look up the 14 points.
I watched a couple videos on the 14 points, and I had to watch it 2 or 3 times in order to get it all because it was like, whoa.
Yeah, I've got severe insomnia, and that's how I fall asleep. Is I watch videos on the 14 points.
If you want to fall asleep, here's Wilson's 14 points. You'll go to sleep by number 2.
So here's the thing. Now, again, I've got friends who are progressives. So I don't want to slam them, but politically speaking, all progressives follow a formula. They tell you that they are against something, and then they tell you, but they're actually for it, and then they tell you they've been swayed to be for it, and then all of a sudden you find out they've enacted the thing that they were originally against that they already had plans for prior to that. Every time you see a progressive do something, that's the formula that they have, and that's
a cycle.
People think I can predict the future. I can't predict the future. They are just predictable. Okay. So what Wilson did was, as we talked about with World War One, he was not an interventionist. He was not, or he said he wasn't. He did not. He wanted the United States to isolate, to be an island and protect ourselves. But years before that, he had talked about conglomerating this League of Nations, which World War One gave him the opportunity for that. His mindset wasn't even as bad as the United Nations are now. His mindset wasn't even that good. His mindset was, we're going to take this group of countries and we're going to have them agree on paper that basically we aren't going to fight amongst ourselves. We're going to settle disputes on a debate floor, but the United States is going to be the police force for the world. That was his ultimate mindset, was the United States is going to be the nanny for the world.
All right.
So my thought is, he saw World War One coming. Like you said, he knew we were going to get involved with it. And he thought, this is exactly the opportunity. If we come in at the last minute and save the day, everybody's going to look at us as being the saviors to the world.
And it was the last minute. Really, it was.
But his plans, like most other intellectuals, were so bad that the United States, after the League of Nations was formed, didn't even participate.
They weren't even a member of it. They were the creator.
Exactly. So did I get that about right, or did I miss anything?
No. That's about right. So one other thing I saw that I liked about Wilson is that he always fought against prohibition.
Yes.
He was against prohibition.
Yes.
He did not like that at all. So other than that, and the little tidbit where he thought that he would resign if he lost in 1916,
Right.
whether that's true or not. If it's true, then I'll be like, that's pretty cool, I guess. But the thing is that then his second wife, we just talked about this, wanted him to run for for a third part. He was basically he was brain dead
Yeah.
to the point where his wife ran the country for probably a year,
Yeah.
and
So
she wouldn't even let the vice president come and see him. Like they was shut off from the media. The media knew nothing. The vice president didn't even know anything what was going on. Only a few select people knew that the president was out.
wasn't she even filtering the paperwork going to Wilson?
She signs crap,
Yeah. So
and then she said, "Well, we're going to run again for a third term."
we're
So,
gonna run.
so if that one thing is selfless in 1916, the 1920 was about as selfish as you can get, which you wonder why Warren G. Harding's slogan was a return to normalcy after all this stuff.
Exactly.
And believe it or not, it worked.
Yes.
Because if you got to put yourself in context of the times, like after all this crap and the war and the League of Nations and all this ABC crap and a return to normalcy sounded pretty good.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. What people don't talk about was we went through a depression during Wilson because of the high taxation and the high tariffs. Again, if he had cut the tariffs off completely and said we're going to have income tax instead, I wouldn't have as much problem with it. I'd still have a problem with it, but not as much. But he left both of them in place, and it created a depression that nobody ever talks about. Thank God we had Coolidge come in and Harding and create a boom right after that.
Right.
Basically, by saying we're going to try to reverse as much stupid crap as has been done for the last 8 years as we possibly can.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it's a beauty about this country. I don't know how it happens, but you go too far to the left, and eventually it comes back to the right and to the middle. And it goes too far to the right and ends up coming back. There's just like, so you go to Wilson and then you go to Coolidge and you go to FDR, then you get to Eisenhower, then you get to LBJ and you get to Reagan. It's like, then you get to Obama. It's back and forth.
Yeah.
It gives me some hope.
Yeah.
In a way, like, you go to Obama and then all of a sudden we kind of have hope, but
he could have been so good. He could have been so good, man. He could have. That was I'm not going to talk about it because we're not doing Obama right now, but missed opportunity. That was a missed opportunity.
So, can you think of anything you like about the Wilson presidency, other than the two?
Right.
Let's say 1.5.
Yeah,
the other one I can't confirm or deny.
He did come around to the women's suffrage movement, or I'm sorry, he apparently was for the women's suffrage movement and then was against it and then came back around to it.
His wife was against it.
His wife was against it, which
is Edith was appalled to these suffrage women.
Right. Every time I try to think of something good for him, I think more and more about how everything was integrated. We were coming together as a nation, racially speaking. We had, you had people in Congress of all races. You had football was fully integrated. People don't think about that. You had. I've been watching the Peyton Manning thing on
pretty
football.
Pretty good.
Yeah. It's good, and he was talking about how the first some of the first head coaches and first great players were black in the fledgling, not quite NFL, but in the precursors of that. And Wilson literally said, "No, we're not having any of that. We're going to segregate everything, including." And he had like his post offices, the offices. The people were upset because these are folks who had been working side by side all this time, were friendly with each other. Nope, you're not allowed to get near each other. He took the military and segregated them. Just a horrible, horrible, horrible human being.
He basically took the progress of 50 years after the Civil War and knocked it back about another 20.
Yeah, at least 20.
Oh, yeah.
Uh, the only other thing I could think of was the women's suffrage movement. You know,
Yeah.
that was that's you know because to me, if you're a citizen of this country, you should be able to vote. Period. You know.
I think it was one of the first. I think it was 1912 was one of the first because they came in by states. Like some of the states, the women can vote, but some of
Yeah,
them couldn't.
yeah. I mean, there were women who held high office. You know.
Right. And in San Francisco, I think I read. You know how I said New Hampshire, Wilson won by like in 1916, won by like 35 votes or something like that. In
Mhm.
San Francisco, like 2/3 of the women voted for um, Wilson. So like if either one of those things didn't happen, Wilson would have probably lost the election the second time.
Yeah, yeah. So no, he just a horrible, horrible human being, man. We're still recovering from the damage that he did, and the precedents that he set were just they're some of the worst in the history of this country. I
So where
mean,
would you rank him?
I've been thinking
Top of your head, not official, not official.
not official. Uh, I I have a hard time not putting him on the bottom. I really do. There are a couple of other people that I would consider because I mean you have to consider Andrew Johnson. You know, yeah, I would have
I think if you research Andrew Johnson, you're gonna be surprised.
yeah. If you based on our criteria, which if you haven't seen our criteria, check out our intro video. We go through how we base
We'll
our
put a
decisions.
link up at the top.
Yep. So we'll check that out, and you'll see how we base our decisions on this, and it's just our opinion. Um, I would have to put him dead last. I would really, if not last, next to last, and I don't know who I'd put below him.
Right.
Yeah.
No, he's definitely not in the top 10. I can tell you
No.
that.
No.
And he's definitely not in the middle.
No.
The more we go through these, we know the basics of all the presidents. Like a lot of these people that I studied that studied Wilson that talked about him. There's the academia, there's the apologist, and
Hmm.
but a lot of them are like he's last.
Yeah.
Wilson is dead last, and
Yeah.
I heard it over and over again. So I think I'm right there with you. If it's not official rankings, but
No.
man, the times and for what he did, and the fact that how he got into office.
Well, and the thing is that normally you could say that if somebody's a bad president, uh, you can usually say, but they were a good person or they had these good qualities. That there aren't any that I can really point to with Wilson. He, from the outside looking in, he was not a good person.
No,
He the people he worked with at every level despised him. And if that many people don't like you, it's not the problem isn't them, it's you.
right. Yeah, and it's like he got elected by luck.
Yeah.
You know, he just happened to be at the right place at the right time. And even he himself just said, I was really never prepared for the presidency.
Mm-hmm.
But how could you to go as quick as he went?
Yeah.
Um, to wake up 2 years, I'm president of a college, and 2 years later I'm president of the United States. Probably, he had the only office he ever had was governor of New Jersey.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. So
But
yeah,
yeah, I'm right there with you. It's very, very near the bottom. I don't care what any of these history books say. Near the top. And I know we talked about this before, but how these presidents during big wars always get up a notch a little bit.
oh yeah.
But as far as even a wartime president, I mean, there's other ones. There's other ones.
Yeah.
But he's got to be down there, bottom three. Bottom
Yeah.
three.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is it's really tough to put anybody on the bottom, you know. But I think if I had to make a definitive, this one's on the bottom, it would be Wilson.
Right.
I'd put him on the bottom.
Right.
Just,
Right.
and he was not a stupid man. He was
Oh,
from all appearances, he was a very intelligent man, which makes it worse. He was smart enough that he knew what he was doing. He knew that he was destroying the foundations of the country.
yeah. He wasn't doing it like, oh, I didn't know. Yeah, he knew what he wanted. He knew what the destruction was. He knew what he was destroying.
Yep.
He had a very strong sense of all of it. He's very well educated, but yeah, it does. It makes you even more angry knowing that what he knew.
The
So
only I was thinking actually LBJ I might have below him, but
yeah,
LBJ signed some stuff. Now he signed it for the wrong reasons, but he signed some stuff that was good, but he signed it for the wrong reasons.
right.
Which when we get into LBJ, we'll
Yeah, well, we'll definitely might have to have a couple beeps into that one.
oh yeah, yeah,
From
that one's gonna be
and that's just quoting the man.
yeah. That's not us, folks. That's not us.
Quoting the man.
I
So
got kind of angry on this episode, and I apologize if anybody got offended at my language. Don't care.
yeah, right. Don't
but
care. I
but
think we both. I think we both did pretty good.
yeah, but with LBJ, it's not going to be us. It's him.
It's gonna be him. Yes, that's right. Any last words on Theodore Wilson?
Oh, is it Theodore or Thomas?
Thomas Wilson. Yeah, Thomas. Yeah, Biff Tannen. Any last words on Biff Tannen?
No, I think we ought to make like three at least.
I think that's a good ending. So with that, we got the magic hefty bag.
The bag of mystery.
Yes. So as most of you know, that we randomly do these presidents. We've done not James Buchanan. We did Benjamin Harrison.
Benjamin
We
Harrison.
did George Washington. We've done John Quincy Adams.
Yeah.
And today we did Biff Tannen.
Yes.
And we're going to randomly pick the most nervous part of the week for me is our next president. So we go by the number,
Yep.
not the name. And I'm going to pull it out and see if Leo can guess which one it is by the number without cheating now.
Oh, come on.
All right, here we go. Here we go. You ready?
Yeah.
Well, here we go.
I can't see it. Oh, 14. 14 is
Lincoln 16.
yeah.
James Buchanan's 15.
I was going to say Buchanan. Was
It's 15.
Buchanan
The
14?
one right before that.
Was that Johnson?
No, Johnson was after Lincoln, remember?
There was two Johnsons.
Yeah, there was LBJ.
Oh, well, yeah. I'm not talking about him. Oh, gosh.
It's an obscure president.
Yeah.
He's actually very interesting, and I just want to double check. I think it's the president from New Hampshire, Franklin Pierce.
Franklin Pierce. Yeah. I think you're right. I think it's Pierce.
Let me make sure, and they obviously rank him towards the bottom.
Yeah.
454.
See here. See if I can find it before you find it.
The 14th president, 1853 to 1857. Franklin Pierce.
Franklin Pierce.
Yes. Tell me what you know about Franklin Pierce, and I'll tell you what I know.
The only thing that I know off the top of my head for Franklin Pierce is that Hawkeye on MASH is named after him. Tell me I didn't steal your thunder on that one.
No.
But
That's a
that's
good
the
one.
only thing. He was Benjamin Franklin Pierce. So
Yeah, Benjamin Franklin Pierce. Hawkeye.
Hawkeye.
Yes,
The
from
only good thing
Crabapple Cove, Maine.
good thing Alan Alda ever did.
Yeah,
I love
him. Regardless of what you think of him, he was a very good actor. That's for
Yes,
sure.
he is. Yes, he is. And he was very funny in that show. So
Yes.
that's literally the only thing I know about. That's how that's how obscure Benjamin Franklin, how obscure Pierce is.
Franklin Pierce.
That's
Well,
the
I knew he was from New Hampshire. The other thing, well, I know a few things, but the one in particular that's kind of, he had a very sad life, but on his way after, I think it was after he was elected, before he became president, him and his wife and his 10-year-old was on a train going somewhere, and the train got into an accident, and his 10-year-old son, the only surviving son, got decapitated.
Really?
In his wife's hands.
Wow.
Which caused his wife to basically be a drooling I mean, she was okay, but mentally she was done.
She was basically Mary Todd Lincoln.
There was no first lady. I mean, she was up in the bedroom the whole time, basically putting herself in isolation. I know he was Franklin Pierce was a drinker. Mm-hmm. He died young. He was an alcoholic, and so it was a very sad presidency.
Yeah.
But of course, this was a time where there was just a bunch of one-term presidents. Mm-hmm. There's still stuff going on. I mean, the Civil War is not quite there, but things are brewing. Presidents didn't want to deal with it, so they kept. It's kind of kicking the can down the road, kind of like the national debt right now. Just throw another trillion at it.
Or six,
or whatever. Kicking the can down the road, but eventually, over time, there's shit's gonna hit the fan.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's gonna be a fun episode.
Yes. So next weekend is the 14th president, Mr. Franklin Pierce.
And I like the episodes where, as much fun as I had with this one, and as angry as I got with this one, I really enjoy the episodes where I have to get in and I have to actually do a lot of learning for the episode, because some of the obscure ones I don't know that much about. I'll be honest with folks. I know a lot. I don't know everything.
That's right. We get to dive in, and we, like we said last week, we could have probably done a pretty good, decent Wilson show without right away. We would have got into it, all this stuff. There are some things that I saw that were like okay, and some things that I didn't know. But with presidents like this, or Fillmore, or even some of the later presidents, maybe like Harding or something like that, we probably have to do a little more. Research, or Gerald Ford, even, it's kind of a little bit more obscure, but that's what makes it fun.
Yeah, no, exactly. We learn so that you guys can learn.
That's right. So, all right. Well, I had fun. Why don't you sign us off properly?
Oh man, I had a blast this week. We want to thank you guys for joining us this week. We had an absolute blast ripping into Thomas Woodrow Wilson. I hate that guy. Yeah, ripping into him. It's we don't do this because we do this because we enjoy it, but we do this because we want you guys to learn, and we want you guys to have fun learning. We're going to teach you stuff that your teachers didn't teach you, because your teachers sucked, to be honest with you. Anyway, thanks for joining us this week, guys. Be sure to join us next week and every week for that matter. If you're seeing us on YouTube, or you're seeing us on whatever platform you're on, hit that subscribe button. Give us a like. Give us a great review. It takes 2 seconds to give us a 5-star review and put something on there like, these guys don't suck that much, or whatever.
They're sort of okay.
They're okay-ish, sure.
That'll be fine.
Yeah. They're okay-ish. That's a heck of a review if you can get somebody on the internet to say they're okay-ish.
Okay-ish.
So you guys be sure to subscribe, give us a rating and review, because that helps us get the word out, which helps us help you guys. So at any rate, I'm Jack Rizzo from my buddy RJ Dufresne. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on Red Pill History. Boom.